Hey guys, this is a Patreon Q&A. If you would like to be in next week's video, simply check out the link in the description and you can sign up there. To everyone listening, there's going to be spoilers for all of the series that I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. Scottish Wolf asks, do you think a single Black S is still alive, or was the final remaining Black S that was in the webcomic replaced by Monaco in the manga? So I don't think so. I'm pretty sure there's at least one single Black S left. So the last time we saw him was in chapter 150 when he was like witnessing the birth of Platinum S. He was saying like joy flows from within as 54 trillion merger come together. It's my true debut. And he was like crying as he was watching it, and then Metalbat came from behind and we're kind of led to believe that he was killed at that point. But I'm assuming, just like in the webcomic, after this arc is over, it's going to be revealed like under the rubble or whatever that one single Black S was able to survive, and he's going to be with the little pup version of Rover as well. I'm pretty sure that kind of has to stay the same way because it also relates back to the Egyptian mythology that a large part of this story is based on, and yes, Black S is a part of it, and that's why Black S is even a thing, because S is like a surprisingly big recurring theme in Egyptian mythology. I know, but you have to remember that this was all written thousands of years ago, and storytelling and just things in general were very different back then. So it's very important that at least one of him survives, even in the manga's continuity, because Black S in general, I'm pretty sure, is one of the most important, if not the most important villain outside of Drive Knight and God. And speaking of God, I think that's where Black S is coming from. Aside from just all monsters in general coming from God, I'm thinking that Black S is like one of his like innate creations. And that's another thing that we've been wondering about since this character was introduced, I'm sure. Like, where does he come from? Was he a human originally? And if he was, then why did he become what he is? But I'm thinking that he's one of the rare cases of like a monster being born as a monster. Like, we've seen it hinted with Vaccine Man, but we also saw it like literally happen real time a couple chapters back with the birth of Sage Centipede. And I'm pretty sure Black S has a similar origin here, because if we go to Viz's chapter 87, the Hot Pot chapter, when it's showing all of the cadres, it singles out Homus Emperor and Black S, and the dialogue over their panels says they're like God's own works of art. And this is pretty interesting because we know that Homus Emperor is a direct result of God. We all know his origin story. He gave Homus Emperor his powers after convening. But on Black S's panel, we see him directly in front of the moon. And if you've been following my Truth About One Punch Man videos, you'll know that moon represents God because of the whole Osiris parallel and all that stuff. And it's saying God's own works of art, I think, is corroborating with what we just talked about. He is like a direct result of God creating a monster from like scratch or whatever. And if we go back to the page where Metalbat seemingly takes him out, part where he says joy flows from within as 54 trillion merger come together, we see all of the S coming together on this egg. But if you'll notice, the egg looks exactly like the aesthetic of God. Now, this could just mean, you know, like I said, all monsters come from God. So naturally, all monsters, whether they were human first or wherever they come from, would naturally share this aesthetic to their creator or their source. But I think it's just more than that. I think this is like for sure telling us that this is like God's creation. And it's also not a coincidence what Black S is currently doing in the webcomic, regaining his strength, staying close to Saitama, who he knows is the one above all. And as I've also been talking about for years, he will eventually regain his strength and become one of the main disciples of God, I'm assuming. He will be like one of the biggest villains that everyone has to come together to take down for sure. And also, there are more elements of the story to come that involve S stuff, so that's where he's going to come into play as well. But also him staying close to Saitama, I'm sure is going to play some part into Saitama's ultimate downfall, or the portion of the story that includes his downfall, which is coming. I'm gonna make a video about this eventually, guys, don't worry. Majin Boros asks, in an alternate universe, if the webcomic version of One Punch Man got animated and treated the same way as Mob Psycho with the cool animation, do you think it would be as popular as it is today, or even better? So I don't think it would be as popular, because I think a big reason of why season 1 was so well received was because of the way that it was made and the adaptation of Murata's adaptation. Now, it would still be popular for sure, but as we see, Mob Psycho is not as popular as One Punch Man, or more so not in the Western side of things. But I do think it would be a good idea to like animate the webcomic online or something, which probably will never happen because I don't really think one cares that much. But I think that's more so suited for something like that, rather than it getting like a huge series and television time and all that stuff. Sean H asks, what are your thoughts on Yu Yu Hakusho if you've ever read it or watched it? It's honestly one of my favorite series despite the ending being awful. So I've read it and watched it many times and I love it. It's one of my favorite series of all time for sure. And I think it's one of the best battle mangas and probably the best battle anime. Maybe. But as for the ending being awful, I wasn't mad at it. Could it have been better? Sure. But it really seems difficult for battle mangas to have a good ending. Because I want you, Sean, and whoever else is watching this video to think about like all of the popular battle mangas. Which one of them have had like a unanimously well-received ending? I can't really think of any. Nearly all of them have been panned somewhat, right? Especially as of recent. Like, it's just difficult to have a good ending, especially one that is going to be universally well received. L asks, is one's writing for the manga gradually becoming less subtle? His comedic, subtle style is what makes his writing so unique and special in my opinion. So I'm sure that a lot of people have been talking about this recently, especially with like the last like 6 or 7 chapters that we've gotten. But I don't want to make too many assumptions because I really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But it is possible that one hasn't been writing it completely as of late. It's possible that maybe he's given the keys to Murata while he handles other stuff. Like maybe he's working on Mob Psycho season 3 possibly, or working on something else, because it's been pretty clear that it's been different and very un-One-like. And I thought for a second maybe One was trying to be more poppy with his style, maybe give it more of a mass appeal, you know. Maybe not. Maybe he's working on something else, and maybe why it has been stalling the way that it has with like the Sage Centipede out of nowhere and all that stuff. Maybe it's because it's been Murata. Now, I don't know for sure. I don't want everyone to think that that is absolutely the case because like I said, there's no way to know. They never really give us any insight into behind the scenes. Star Reaper asked, is it just me or does it feel like My Hero is getting rushed to a finish and that's taking away from the story? It's kind of sad that I think they could have done so much more with it without it dragging on. So yeah, it does kind of feel like it's being rushed, but at the same time, like taking its time to get there, if that makes sense. I do feel like there could have been so much more to this story, especially more to the academia side, and I know that's become a meme as of late. Like, it hardly focuses on the academia stuff despite it being the title of the series. Like, there's kind of like a huge paradigm shift about 3/5 of the way into the series where it's just Deku is the Messiah and All For One is this great grand villain and he's behind everything, and then everything else kind of just takes a back seat to that. I mean, don't get me wrong, that side of the story is cool, especially with the Shigaraki and the villain development and all that stuff, but there's just so much more potential to the series. And I assume this comes down to maybe politics behind the scenes, maybe pressure that Horikoshi is getting, or maybe Horikoshi just wants to end the series. Maybe he's just over it and he just doesn't want to do this anymore. And to be honest, I don't blame him. Natedawg asks, so Saitama will never lose a fight physically, but we all agree he could lose one mentally, perhaps? What if God tricked Saitama into doing something wrong by promising a worthy fight? That's all Saitama is searching for, and I wouldn't be surprised if he can be tricked by a literal God. Saitama is the worthy sacrifice for God to return. So Saitama has already been tricked in the webcomic, but in more ways than one, and it will all come to fruition pretty sure whenever the webcomic comes back, if it ever comes back. But I personally think that it's not going to come down to God promising Saitama anything. And as for Saitama being the worthy sacrifice, he's not, because Saitama is like the Antichrist to God. He is everything that God didn't want to happen. And that's why we see on the mural, it's literally Orochi, because that was his plan the whole time, to have humanity eventually give birth to an Orochi type being. Jimmy P asks, what did Jogo mean when he wanted to acquire the prison realm for his collection? What aspirations does he have to gain from it? Please forgive me if it's an ignorant question because I only follow the anime. So Jimmy, I can't answer this question because you only follow the anime, and everything that has to do with the prison realm has already come to fruition and it's all been explained at this point. So I suggest either go into the manga at this point because it's pretty great, or just wait for season 3, maybe they'll do it in season 2. Even then, there's even more to it that will have to come in the next couple years anyway. Delamante asks, who do you think would win between Himejima and Kokushibo? So I think it's been established that Kokushibo is much stronger than any individual Hashira, even the implied to be strongest Hashira in Himejima. So it would be competitive at first, probably. I don't think it would be like a complete squash match at first, but he would eventually get overwhelmed for sure, because Kokushibo was already established to be at the highest level of power outside of just, being Muzan himself. And it took a little bit for the Hashira to catch up, getting the mark, getting the ability to see the transparent world. So even if Himejima got those plot interventions during the fight, I still don't think that would be enough. And at the minimum, he would need like another Hashira by his side to take down Kokushibo. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. I want to thank all of my patrons for continuing to support me. I really do appreciate it, so thank you so much. And once again, if you would like to be in next week's video, check out the link in the description. You can sign up there. And if you like the video, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.